Welcome to the Modern Mythos Podcast, a show dedicated to the keepers and players of the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game and other investigative horror games. I'm John Hook.
And I'm Seth Skorkowski, and together we'll discuss writing, game mastering, and player tips and how you can apply them to your table. This episode will be imagining changes we'd like to see in a hypothetical 8th edition of Call of Cthulhu. So, just to make it clear, they haven't made any announcements that I've heard, but if they did, what would we like?
No announcements. Exactly. No announcements. We're just playing an imaginary sandbox here.
And what's funny is we had talked about doing this, and so it doesn't actually have any relation to what's going on currently with D&D, with D&D 1, but I don't know, it might have somehow been in our minds just because the online, everybody's talking about new editions. So I think that might have put a little bit of a subliminal bug in our head to actually talk about this one of if Call of Cthulhu was ever going to make a new edition change. As much as I love 7th edition, and I absolutely love it, what would we like to see that could improve? What could we make a good thing better?
Yeah, I agree. I also absolutely love 7th edition. I got to help kind of do some of the early play testing with 7th edition, and it's great. But yeah, there's always room, right? There's always room for a little bit of improvement, a little bit of changes, some lessons that we've learned or things that we would want to see in a hypothetical 8th edition.
Well, yeah, I'll go ahead and kind of start with the first one that really came to my mind. That's dealing with sanity. And some of this we've mentioned before in previous episodes. Yeah, part of what was is kind of dredging up. Remember that thing we talked about? Let's talk about that seriously. And sanity in other games out there, whether they be Cult, which I've been playing, or Delta Green, they have relationships be a very key aspect to a character, where you've got 2 or 3 NPCs that your character is very close to, or possibly PCs as well. And as your sanity starts declining, you have to sacrifice part of your closeness with these people, basically saying you're kind of withdrawing away as you're kind of losing your grip. So I'd kind of like to see something like that incorporated into Call of Cthulhu, where cherished things or your relationships are sacrificed. And this isn't like with Bout of Madness, where the GM has the option of changing it. This is something where a player is like, I don't want to take that much sand loss. Where it's like, I can't afford to lose that much, so I will sacrifice this for a lesser amount of sand loss, or as a way to more quickly recover from sand loss. But it's like a permanent thing where your mother is your closest person and all that, and at the end she's no longer a cherished person in your life. That is something that you have surrendered due to your crumbling sanity. I'd like to see that sort of mechanic.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot, and I guess I would want to have an understanding on how this would, like, what kind of change is it in the character? Because as I think about this, I'm taking a couple things into, I'm making certain assumptions. One assumption is that the cherished contact, and let's continue with the mother example, that person in that character's life is still alive. And that person is most likely not gallivanting and encountering the true horrors of the universe and being exposed to this, mythos threat like the investigator is. So mom is still in Iowa and, has loving, warm thoughts about son. So what is it when you say that you're sacrificing that relationship or you're sacrificing that character what is it that you're sacrificing?
Okay.
Is your character having, now only has, bad memories or something about him? I mean,
Well,
I guess I'm trying to figure out what that
part
means.
of it would be a role play thing, but as far as a mechanical aspect, so when you're making your character, you do mark one thing as far as your favorite place, or your favorite person, or your favorite object as having that special relationship. And when you're going through recovery of sanity, you can lean on that to get a bonus, kind of like a special connections rule. I forgot to look it up before we started talking, but for that, then we would have to have something like that with relationships, where if you are going through the investigator development phase and you're wanting to recover some sanity or something like that, if you spent some time with your mother or whoever your relationship was, that gives you a better recovery for sanity. So there's a mechanical benefit that you get because this is something that's special to your character. But then all of a sudden you get hit with, oh man, you just lost 9 points of sand, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna drop 5 off of that, but I am going to sacrifice my relationship with my mother, where I no longer get this benefit for that improves my sanity if I was to spend time with her later. So it is a mechanical aspect, and I like the idea that this is something that the player opts into, where this isn't the keeper does it. This isn't automatic. This is, what do you want to do to prevent this sand crush from happening to you?
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that because I had forgotten about that mechanical benefit that's available to characters if they still have that link, the link to a significant person or a link to a meaningful place. I do love how in Delta Green they have them, they call them their pillars, and then you can crumble pillar. I think that's a kind of a cool concept for that. So yeah, I can see how now Mom, who's still, hoping Sunny Bunny Boy, comes back from his world travels, for apple pie and whatnot, that he's now just this broken person who is no longer communicating with his mother and, probably
they're just not connected.
Doesn't even realize that they're just, like sending these hateful vibes or even actual hateful messages out and is, utterly destroying that relationship that he once had.
So I like that as just something to actually kind of show the crumbling of the character. So I would like something like that, because that's something that we've in Cult that we've been playing has with relationships, and I do like that. But also with sanity, we've talked before that sanity in the game, there's basically 2 types. There's your Mythos sanity, like I saw a deep one or I saw a ghoul, and now I understand that the true nature of the universe, and my mythos will go up if I suffer a bout of madness from the sanity loss, etc. But then there's also the jump scare sanity, like I saw a horrific crime scene, where a serial killer had torn some people apart. There's no mythos relationship. So I don't think that should affect sanity in the same way. So I kind of like the idea of almost temporary sanity loss. So if you see a ghoul or a deep one or a great Cthulhu, the sanity loss is permanent. And that's when you can have the bout of madness that increases your Cthulhu mythos by 1, etc. But then there's kind of like your jump scare sanity, and that's like daily. And that can go down, and it can drive you insane. It can make you indefinitely insane because you have PTSD from some horrific stuff. But then that just comes right back during the investigator development phase or after a certain amount of time, either daily or investigator development, to where all of those temporary points are replenished. So you could have a case where the character's at 40 san, but 15 of that's been temporary. And then the next game starts. they're 15 up just right out the gate because they have recovered from all those little jump scares.
Yeah. And you know what? I think we're almost there in the game right now. Because if you think about it, Mythos-induced sand losses, especially if they're going to be, if it's Mythos-induced, I think it almost goes without saying that it's a monster encounter, and every monster encounter and a Mythos loss, sand loss because of that includes a gain in your Cthulhu Mythos, and we already know that as your Cthulhu Mythos goes up, it drops your
max sand.
Your max sand. So your that feels like that's already like a permanent loss. It's dropping that ceiling. I think the one piece that we're not really enabling right now is the at the end of a session, at the conclusion of a mystery adventure, mystery scenario, and in the downtime in between, saying, oh, hey, the sand that you've lost all from that encounter and this encounter and that encounter, where there was the dead bodies, or this clue site was horrific, but there was no Cthulhu Mythos increase. Let's just go ahead and restore all that. We're not doing that now, but that's an easy fix, I think. And I totally agree with that. Anything that's a temporary loss like that, you should be able to get that back in a fairly short period, with it not being completely related to the rewards, sand rewards that you might get at the end of a scenario.
And
sand rewards always seem fairly light-handed to me. It seems like you go through a ton of sand loss in both the permanent style, where it's tied to a Mythos encounter, and then just because you saw that crumpled body after being hit by a car, the sand rewards aren't really paying you back for those kinds of things. So yeah, I think we could easily kind of
and a lot of scenarios do a lot of jump scare sand loss that always bugged me, because it's like, well, the monster, you only lost a d6 and you get a d6 back at the end because you defeated the monster. However, we had a half dozen, single or 1d2 point things, which at the end of the day equaled or more than the monster. And that really wasn't the type of the Mythos sand loss. So it's almost like, sand loss with all caps or all lowercase is kind of how I'd almost want to differentiate as far as permanent and temporary.
Yeah, I guess I am completely guilty of that too. And in scenarios that I've written, I will have several instances, because it almost seems to me like these are the introductory sand losses that you're taking by seeing this horrific scene or encountering that thing, you opened up the package that came in the mail and there's a severed finger in it.
And there should be that temporary sand loss. And I think enough of it should be able to send you through a bout of madness, or definitely insane, because you've had a mental break from too much of that too quickly. But I think at the end of the day, when we hit investigator development, that should just fade away. And we're stuck with the Mythos sand loss being the real thing.
Seth, something that I have also had some issues with is automatic fire. Using a weapon that has, the capabilities for full automatic fire, or a 3-round burst, that kind of thing. So submachine guns, Tommy guns, M16s, something like that. And it's rules as written. I think it's just a little bit tedious. It's to go through and try and do automatic gunfire in Call of Cthulhu as it is right now.
Oh yeah, and the other aspect to it is the submachine gun skill is what you use, even if you're firing an M16 or a machine pistol. It goes by the SMG skill. So instead of your pistol or
Mm-hmm.
instead of your rifle, because in all honesty, if your Tommy gun's got a stock, it's a rifle. It doesn't matter that it's shooting a 45 caliber pistol round. It's either an automatic rifle or a single shot rifle. So I agree. And the automatic fire, the way it's written, I actually do like it, except for it is tedious. It's part of that dance with a lot of games where sometimes you're like, ooh, I really like the realistic aspect of as I'm firing more shots, it's kind of running away and it's kind of harder to hold it on target because more and more bullets are coming out and the recoil's bouncing it around. I like that, except for in practice. When you're sitting around the table, I think it does start becoming a little bit more complicated. I always have to re-explain it to my players almost every single time. So yeah, I'd like to rework automatic fire. What are your thoughts on it?
So one, I'm not in favor of the whole number of bullets that hit are based on, your skill divided by 10 and that. I'm not a fan of trying to figure out X number of bullets hit target. I would just rather assume that in a volley of fire, you're just trying to send a bunch of bullets downrange and hopefully just one hit. And just assume it's just one. And that's what we're going to roll damage for, is what you see for that. Because the damage for these automatic weapons are already horrific enough. And that assumption is that's, it's a bullet, right? So the game already has the elegance of the standard success, hard success, and extreme success, and the elegance of penalty dice, bonus dice, and penalty dice. I think our answer for automatic fire lies in that, using those systems that are already existing to a more simplistic, expedient resolution, and I would base it on not bullets, but targets, number of targets. So if you're going to use an automatic weapon and you're going to do a full auto burst, and I would just have the two types of automatic, either full automatic or something I would call snap fire, which was, your 3-round burst, but either auto fire or snap fire. And in auto fire, if you're shooting at one target, it's going to be your standard success with one penalty die, because the gun is going to kick and move. I have fired an automatic weapon, on full auto, and it is difficult to hit a stationary target at, 50 yards. It's going to be even worse trying to hit a moving target, right? So you have to assume that there's some dodging and weaving, juking and jiving going on with the person you're trying to hit, right? They're not going to just stand there and take it. So if you're shooting at a single target, regular success with a penalty die, you're going to shoot at 2 targets. It's going to be a hard success with a penalty die. If you shoot at 3 targets, it's a extreme success with a penalty die. If you shoot at more than 3 targets, it's an extreme success with 2 penalty dice. And I think that really just cuts it to the chase right then and there. If you're going to do it as a 3-round burst, a snap fire, then you can only do a maximum of 2 targets. So your full automatic is going to allow you to potentially target more people, but you're making one roll, and you're either going to be successful or not in doing that. Now, there's ups and downs to that, because doing one roll against 3 or more targets, all right, maybe that doesn't seem fair. So this is where we can have a conversation. But
I would still roll.
I feel like there's a way to try and bring this in a bit.
I would still do it for individual targets, but the idea of where it is currently, if I just want to hold auto fire on one character and unload 4 volleys, then I'm rolling 4 times. I'd rather just be one time and we're done. Now, as far as damage, I would like it to be more than like a single bullet damage, because if you're hitting the bad guy like 6 times in a couple seconds, I'd like it to be devastating. But I also like the idea of it being a lot harder to really lock in on it, just because it is kicking around. The flash is in the way of the sight, and it's just bucking around. So for that, I don't know if we would want to do it as a multiplier, or if we did have it based off of the multiplier be based off whatever skill it is you're using. So if you're using a machine pistol, we'd use your handgun. So automatic would be a state of, or a condition for a skill that you have. So if it's an automatic rifle, if you're doing single shot, it's 1. If you're rocking and rolling and you flip it on full auto or snapshot, that's the condition, but it's still the same skill. If it was based off of your skill level divided by 10. So if you got a 50, it could be 5. You got a 40, it's 4. And then instead of like single bullets, it's like a multiplier.
Yeah, I think I like the multiplier idea. As I look at the damage for some of these weapons, they're pretty comparable to just regular pistol damage. So having a multiplier is probably the better way to go, I think. But you definitely just have to make it more expedient at the table to make these attacks. So yeah, maybe you do, if you're going to shoot at 3 targets, maybe you should make that attack roll, at extreme success with a penalty die each for each of those 3 targets, or if it's 4 or more targets, extreme success with 2 penalty dice for each of those 4 or more targets. And then if successful, roll your damage, times, 2 if it's full auto, or just regular damage as it's listed if it's snapfire.
Yeah. And
because again, you're not going to be hitting with more than really probably 2 bullets is all that's going to really hit in a full auto.
Oh yeah, but we still want the glory and fun of an RPG, and we're rocking and rolling. But at the same time,
that's true.
Well, I like the concepts behind the way it currently is. I just think it's actually just a little too many steps, and became a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. And that's, I don't know, that's kind of the risky thing when it comes to game design, is it's just one little thing that you're doing, and all of a sudden it's just too complicated, and it's a razor's edge between being too simple or too complex. And I think if we just did it as a multiplier and a condition rather than an independent skill, remove the SMG skill altogether, and I think that would also encourage people to use automatic fire, or at least a lot less questions.
Yes. Yeah. There would be a lot less time spent in the book reviewing the samples that are given and the step-by-step process if we can just lean in with the more intuitive portions of this game. Because I find the regular half and fifth values for each skill super intuitive.
Oh, yeah.
And then being able to throw in bonus dice or penalty dice depending upon the situation, in which case I would think penalty dice would be the way to go with this, is also super intuitive. And I think it just, it gets to the core. I think it would accurately express the difficulty of the test, and you get to just do it quickly, And yeah, I do like the idea, instead of one roll, determine how many targets you're going for, and then that sets what the test level is, the difficulty, and then make that test level for each of your intended targets.
Okay. Another one, and
that's great.
We've talked about this once before, is with credit rating. In the older editions, there was sometimes rewards to your credit rating. Like, if you did this job and you found the criminals that were all over the front page, your credit rating goes up by 3 points or 5 points or something like that. Because credit rating, used to, and it still does to me, mean your kind of personal reputation. So I would like to see
absolutely
more credit rating rewards and penalties in regards to reputation, because as your character gets more, a greater reputation, that's when all of a sudden they can get that bank loan, or all of a sudden somebody does tell them the hot tip with the investment, or as their reputation goes down, less people are coming with the hot tips or with those nice little investment opportunities. So, and that's more of just kind of a backward step of, I would like credit rating more linked to reputation than it currently is.
Yep.
With almost a paragraph worth of rules of like, hey, this is how at the end of a game, if they did something that was, of great note, it can go up or down, depending on, and a couple examples.
Even now, your dilettantes, any investigator with a high social status also has a high credit rating. Now, credit rating, I think, as it's written now in 7th edition, it is too tightly expressive. It's almost like it's the game mechanics expression of your wealth, monetary wealth. It should be a social status as well. It should reflect your social status. And if it doesn't, then they should have created a new skill, social status, so that you could have your money and your social status, fluctuate individually. But I think that would be a step backwards, because I think your social status and your access to wealth are interlinked, especially when we're, talking playing in the 1920s, the classic jazz era. So I like having, credit rating be your reputation, be your social status, as well as your position in wealth.
So that was pretty simple. And another simple one, which 7th edition did a fantastic job tightening down the number of skills. We don't have punch and kick and bite and all that. It's just brawl.
Right. Yes.
So I was kind of going through them, and the only one that I really think should just go ahead and let's link them is spot hidden and listen. And the reason is spot hidden is 4 of the 5 senses. If they walk into a room and there was ghouls, roll spot hidden to smell the ghoul stank, or if they're running their hand along the stone, spot hidden is how they detect the tiny seam or something in it. But then listen is just listen. So I would go ahead and put all of those into 1.
Yeah, and the word perception is I think already used in many, many games, but it's such a good descriptor for your catch-all for all the human senses, But yeah, I think we should blend those together and have it really expressly include smelling, touching, tasting.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
So,
yeah. Something that the game already does, and I really would like to see them lean more into, is having core characteristics be the base or the determining factor for some skills. For example, dodge. Dodge is already half of your dex, and your own language is already equal to your full education value. We need more of that in our skills, like especially the social skills, right?
Oh,
charm. I think it's a no-brainer that charm, its core, its base value should be half of your appearance.
Okay.
Persuade could be or should be, the base value is half of your intelligence.
Okay, because you can make a good debate or a well thought out argument.
Exactly, right? And then with Intimidate, You know, I mean, that's usually a very physically imposing kind of social skill. You know, it could be either half your strength or half your size, right? Depending upon, during character creation, whichever one is better, I would think, because really that would be your innate skill that you'd be leaning forward. Maybe you're a really short dude, but you are just built like a brick house.
Danzig.
People are going to notice that,
Okay. No, and that falls into something I've, for a couple of years now, I've thought, like, if you get like a really high app, maybe you should have a bonus die. And then if you get a really high, size or strength, your Intimidate should have a bonus die. But if you're a teeny little squirt, a penalty die. And I think it's just a lot more simple, and you never have to think about it again after character creation if it's
right,
just based off your stats. And we just do that as your starting point. And after that, you've got your regular points that you can purchase skills with, and then do normal improvement. But your app affects your charm. Even if you're doing your charm or your Intimidate over the phone, that's just what your base is. And we never have to add modifiers or anything again. It's just one and done. So no, I like that because it does reward a character for being very pretty or very intelligent or whatnot. But it doesn't have to be something that everybody has to keep track of like, oh, I've got a bonus die on that because I'm so pretty, or I've got a penalty die because I'm such a tiny squirt. So now I like that. Now,
yeah,
one that and this is actually a little bit more complicated, is when it comes to education, if you've got a character that's got an 80 education, you've got like a doctorate, right? I feel that they should have more skills, but almost academic skills, because that's their education. It's not just their intelligence. So kind of what I was thinking about is, how there is the investigator experience package, like the soldier experience or the medical experience, where you get a couple skill points here at the cost of usually some starting sand, where it's almost like academic paths. So during character creation, let's say it's like, if your education is 50 or more, you can qualify for these education packages, and it costs 40 of your starting points. But with those 40 starting points, you put them in exactly this academic package. So it gives you a little bit of history, it gives you a little bit of biology, it gives you a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you don't get to negotiate them. It's like, I'm buying this one, and that's where those points go. But it might reward you with 80 points for the cost of your 40, or 60 points for the cost of your 40. But then, if your education is 75, you qualify, or 65 or something, you qualify for these packages, which maybe they cost 60, but that's where we start getting the higher education stuff. So then we've got these characters that have this academic history, where they do have a couple of the sciences. They do have natural world and a little bit of biology and a little bit of chemistry and all this, because if they're that educated, it's kind of assumed usually that they have been schooled. And you could do different ones, like, the different, like, it's almost career path ones, to where, look, I didn't go to college, but I've been working as an electrician for so long, and it's not just my career skills. This is my education on it, because, then I made some inventions and stuff like that. So where they then take some of those starting points that would kind of go towards their career, and they actually buy this with their education points. And then what's left over, they then spend on their career or their pickup skills or whatever it is. So I would like that, because I think it would make a lot more well-rounded characters that have skills in some of those areas. Like, how many adventures have you seen where, like, say, they need to make a biology roll or a chemistry roll, and everybody looks at each other like, none of us have biology or chemistry. And like, all of you have an intelligence or an education of 75 or more, and not a single one of you knows a lick of biology or a lick of this. And I think if you allowed that, it would, one, because you're spending 40 and you're getting 60 points out of it or whatever, that's a nice little purchase, but it is actually putting them in those areas of an academic path.
I absolutely agree with this, because science-based skills all have a root value of 1%, which means anyone who wants to build a scientifically based character, they become skill point poor during character creation because they're spending so many of their points in the sciences, just because that befits the background of the character that they're building.
Oh yeah, I have
and if
physics and astronomy, because those are linked, or chemistry and biology, because those start at 1. And I wanted to put 40 points into both of them. I now have no skill points for anything else, but at the same time,
nothing else.
40 isn't that great for a professional.
Right.
So
yeah, 40 isn't. So, if you wanted to be, competent, if you had a 70 plus education, you would think, especially if you're saying that my character is Dr. So-and-so. Well, if you're going to be Dr. So-and-so, you're going to need to have 60% in the field of, in your choice field of study. So I like the idea of buying during character creation, if you do choose to go an academic route, I am going to be a doctor of knowledge, not necessarily doctor of medicine, although I think that falls under this purview as well, but doctor of knowledge. Buy one of these packages and it comes preloaded with the skills at certain levels, and you're only spending X number of your build points to buy that package, but there's a bonus in there. You're getting some benefits for that package buy, which you would not have gotten if you were just building those skills, at a single point at a time, because the dang thing is starting at 0.1%. And if you're thinking modern, the street punk who's learning chemistry in order to cook meth has a different understanding and a different skill level of chemistry than the same, his twin brother who went to, Harvard and is learning, chemistry in a classroom,
Oh, because then you're linking it to biology and pharmaceuticals, but then they had to take a foreign language while they were there. And they had to take, this course and this course. And it kind of shows the fact that with your academic history, to give you that education of 80 or whatever it is, you also were forced by whichever school it was that you went to diversify. So it's not all in this one area. It's also spread out among, a little bit, like, well, I've got a little bit of law and I've got a little bit of accounting and I've got but then I've got a lot of this because that was what my education was in. So I would like to just see kind of like a list of little packages in it where it's like, well, if you spend this much here, you can qualify for this. If you spend this much, you get these. And then after that, they spend whatever skill points they have left to round out their character.
Yep. Yeah. I like that idea. I like that a lot. Something else that I think is really interesting and could be played up more is characters, investigators who are bilingual, right? We make a lot of the players, at least a lot of players that I know, because my native language is English. So the games that I play are in English. The characters that I play speak English. And so I think it would be more interesting to start introducing more investigators who are bilingual, right? Investigators, who, their origin is one where they were born and raised in a country of origin that English was not their native language. And not that they didn't have access to English, because I think it's still interesting for those characters to be able to blend with the other characters and speak a common language. But having bilingual characters, I mean, being bilingual in and of itself is astounding. You know, they even say, you know, in real life, people who are bilingual are, you know, typically much more successful in life, right? They have the ability to speak this other language, possibly even 2 or 3 languages, and get deeper into
languages
into the world.
Are kind of like we were mentioning with like sciences, where it's like it starts at 1. So if you want to have your character, you know, who, you know, grew up in a region that spoke, you know, both Italian and German or whatever they are, they're now, you know, starting, one of them starts at their education level. So if their education 60, they get a 60 in one of those. And then the other one starts at 1%. And now they got to spend a ton of points just to get it up to conversational.
Mm-hmm.
I recently did have a player who wanted to have a character that was Turkish, and basically started with, I think it was going to be Russian and Turkish were the 2 languages he was looking at, and it soaked up almost all of his skill points trying to do that. So yeah, I would like that. So
yeah, he became skill point poor in the process of trying to create a character that, you know, fit the background that he had. But he ran out of points in order to be also more diversified and more, you know, capable to drive the runaway car, you know, the getaway car, or you know, pick up the rifle and you know, fight the creature that is coming at him. So
the character had no social skills. That's where he was lacking. He was absolutely terrible.
Yeah. See. Yeah. That. So. Yeah, having if a hypothetical 8th edition came out, being able to have a package for investigators who are bilingual, right? You're starting off as this other, you know, as a native speaker of this other country. Go ahead, and you should be able to start with English at the minimum, or whatever second language that you want at a certain level, and then maybe, you know, another language. If you wanted to add a third language, you know, it starts at a lower level, right? So maybe your second language is half your education. If your own language is your full education value, maybe a second language, the starting value is your half education. And if you wanted a third language, maybe it starts at your hard, you know, your 1/5 value of your education, right?
Okay.
I mean,
would say
that'd be an easy way to start multiple languages.
I would say if you had 3, that's where, because otherwise, if you say that your primary is always going to be your education, everyone's going to be trilingual. So maybe it's like, well, if you want a third language, it would be 2 of them start at your 50%, and that third one is at your 1/5. But if you wanted to, yeah, you can say if it works with your background, your primary language, whichever one you're educated in, is your education. And then your secondary one is your half education. Or if you wanted to feel like there was at least something sacrificed, it could be your education minus 10 for the first one, and then your education 50% for the second one, and we're good to go. And I think that would be really good because, you know, I've got several bilingual friends that just grew up in homes where they spoke 2 languages, and that's just how they always did it. So I think something like that would allow a little bit more of a rounded character. And I don't think having a character speak 2 languages is going to just suddenly throw the game completely out of balance.
No, because the other assumption is that those other languages are currently spoken languages. So your other language isn't going to be, you know, ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, you know, or a dead Latin language of some sort. I mean, it will be a spoken language.
Yeah.
And so we know that so many of these, you know, tomes and stuff are written in dead languages. They're written in, you know, ancient Latin or something. So it's not like you're getting these other languages that are going to give you instant access to all the magic books.
Yeah. But if you want to say it's like, well, I'm from French Canada, and I speak English and I speak French, or
no, we draw the line at French Canada. Man.
Okay,
No way.
Sorry, didn't mean to. Or it's just I was the child of Hungarian immigrants. I went to school. I learned English, and at home we spoke Hungarian, and that's why I speak 2 languages. Yep. And you just work that into your background, and then you're done. No, I like that.
Yeah, that's really good.
Now, when it comes to education, though, one of the things I'd like to see is a way to increase your education, because the education doesn't just give you your starting skill points; it also is your no roll. Right? If I roll a no roll, if you know who this celebrity is, or whatnot, or if you want to know what the capital of California is, or something like that. So I would like to see that in something like training, and not just education. I kind of like to see that where there was a way to increase other characteristics. If after an adventure, your character's like, you know what, I'm going to go home, I'm going to drink milk, and I'm going to pick up some free weights, and, by God, I'm going to increase my strength. Or I'm going to start practicing parkour and increase my dexterity or whatnot. Sort of your investigator development phase, your off time, the 3 months or whatever between adventures was just this Rocky montage.
Exactly. Yes. Spent 3 months in a refrigerator unit, punching sides of beef. Exactly.
Yes, the punching meat rule. That's what we would like to add to Call of Cthulhu. There is the training section in the book. I think it is. I think we noted here, page 98. So yeah, between sessions, your characters can train. The examples are primarily based towards skills, going to the firing range, taking a fencing class, going to the county annex and taking a foreign language class, right? So you could do that kind of thing. You could, take some general education skills and increase your EDU, or maybe if it's a modern day, just binge reality TV and expand your no roll or something. I don't know. Your pop culture skill, which I think is your no roll.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'd like to see a way to increase certain stats, or
have a character who says, hey, during my 3-month downtime, I had a facelift. I want to increase my app. I had surgery to increase my appearance. So
I think
there could be ways to do all that.
I'd just like to see kind of some sort of thing where you probably do have to spend a set amount of time, kind of like reading a Mythos tome. We have to spend a set amount of time, and at the end you get to have an improvement check. But during that time, you're not training on anything else. You're not reading Mythos tomes. You're at home on the Bowflex or whatever it is, or you were studying at night's classes or whatever. I think that would be cool.
That's already, and I feel like that's already available. It's just something that players and keepers need to not forget and make it.
Well, yeah, with training skill,
take advantage of it.
It is, but like I said, I just like to raise the stat of education.
Yeah, I think the raising of the stat is possibly implied, but it's not expressly written out there. So it's the avenue is there. It's just reminding players and keepers that in addition to the skills, you can, because I think it does talk about taking classes and increasing your education.
Oh, does it?
So, does it? I think it does. I thought I saw that today. But,
well, damn, I'm totally wrong. I still want to learn free weights.
But yeah, free weights or a facelift or, anything like that. Joining a hardcore dodgeball, because if you can dodge a wrench, you could dodge a ball.
Damn right.
So that's out there. Take advantage of it.
One that I would love is have you read The Dare?
I have.
So
yes.
One of my favorite things in the world in The Dare was what they called Call of Cthulhu. damn it, man, I want to see a collection of adventures using the Call of Cthulhu rules. We had an absolute blast because it was basically simplified rules for playing 12 and 13-year-old kids. So when you go into Call of Cthulhu, it's got the aging rules where your education for one can go up the older you get, but it kind of starts at like 20. And I would actually like to see it go younger to where, you roll your stats like normal. And then it's like, okay, you want to be 10 years old? Well, this is how your stats reduce. But at the flip side, you might have it be, if you're that young, because your brain is a sponge, you maybe when you're doing the skill improvement, you have a penalty die. That way you're more likely to fail and you're learning faster. Or you roll a d10 plus a d6 because you're learning faster. But your hit points stink. And all this because
really,
because
I was actually gonna say the inverse. You should actually get a hit point bonus as a kid, because it always seems to me like kids will go and get beat up, cut up, scratched. They're the ones who are jumping on skateboards and face planting on concrete because they're trying to figure out how to, jump their skateboard up onto a handrail and slide down, 10 feet of steps. But it took them 30 tries, and they kept planting their face on concrete steps, but they just bounce right back up and keep doing it. I almost feel like you should get bonus hit points if you're playing a kid, because you just bounce back from everything.
Almost like some sort of just soak, where it's like, look, just ignore the first point of damage. Just ignore it.
Yeah, there you go.
It's like, you took 5 points? Well, only to mark down 4. That first one just got you're the fact that you're a child and you're made of rubber. That point bounced off. But
yep.
So I would like to see some sort of way that we could play younger kids. And I think that could be really cool for certain adventures where you do the prequel adventure, where it's like, okay, the first adventure of this campaign, you're 10 years old. And, then you have your kind of it sort of adventure.
Yes.
And it's like,
yes.
Okay, the next one, it's 15 years later, and you're walking in with your characters that are pretty much the characters you rolled up originally. But so the first ones were like, okay, then we took these modifiers into account where we reduced their stats and we made these changes. We played them as kids, and now we're going to play them as adults. Or you can just have kind of that Monster Squad campaign where you're a bunch of kids. And no one in town believes you that there's deep ones down at the harbor. So it's up to us and our skateboards to solve the problem. So exactly. Because the kind of kid adventure games are also very, very popular right now. You had Kids on Bikes, and there was Dark Places and Demigorgons, and there's several more whose names are all escaping me, but I can see the covers. And I think Call of Cthulhu, especially after seeing that Call of Cthulhu mod that they had done for the Dare, could easily do it. And I would like to see that as kind of a little thing that is just in the core book for, hey, we always talk about if you want to be older, what if you want to be kids?
That's a fantastic idea. I love the Call of Cthulhu, and yeah, I'd love to see that applied to other scenarios. Some of those classic Blood Brother scenarios would be perfect run with kids. In fact, I think a few of them do a hack of a sort to simulate a kid character, but I don't think any of them do it as well as the current edition of the Dare with Cthulhu.
Oh, it was absolutely beautiful. That is an adventure we should probably spend an episode just talking about. I could gush about that thing for an hour.
Agreed. We should have a guest on for that. Something else I think would be great to talk about in today's episode, something that, Seth, you definitely introduced me to and re-educated me on, because I'm sure I read this, but I just completely skimmed over it, and I have forgotten about it. But it's the whole concept of having transferable skill sets.
Oh, yeah.
groups of skills that could be bound together so that as one gets improvements and hits certain thresholds, it will grant automatic improvements of a lesser degree to its companion, or even possibly multiple companion, but related skills, because becoming more proficient in skill A has transferable skills so that skill B also increases. And I love this idea. I guess I just wasn't really paying attention to it.
We use the hell out of it. So for those who are not familiar with transferable skills, essentially how it works is the most common trees are fighting. So brawl, as well as sword and spear and chainsaw, and your melee skills are one tree. And then firearms are another. And then languages have their own. That's where it starts getting complicated. But with like firearms, for example, once the first one of the firearms skills hits 50, the first one, all of the others that are a firearm skill get a plus 10. As long as that plus 10 does not bring them above 50. So if you got a 45 and another one hits 50, you're only going to get 5 points in that particular one. So the idea being, as you get better in one, some of that does bleed over to the other related skills. And then again, once the first one hits 90, all of the others get a plus 10, as long as that doesn't bring them individually above 90. So with brawl, same thing. So if your brawl gets to 50, your ability to wield a chainsaw or spear or sword goes up by 10. That has been absolutely phenomenal in ours. Languages, it happens, but it can't be with your starting language, which that's the part that bums me out. And then it goes through a language tree, such as your Germanic languages, your Romantic languages, like, French, Italian, and Spanish are close enough that if your French goes above 50, your Italian and Spanish get a plus 10. Yeah, it's not enough to make you suddenly amazing at it, but it's like those languages are close enough related that a lot of the knowledge that you have is transferring back and forth between them. Love transferable skills.
This is such a fantastic idea. I don't know how or why I've missed it. And it's listed as an optional rule, just like luck spend is an optional rule. But I'll tell you, in every game, in every 7th edition game I've played, we have always used the luck spend, because it is just a brilliant rule, and it really can ratchet up the tension, especially as you're like getting to the climax of a scenario, and now you've got these characters who are, damn near all of them are luck poor, and you're going into a situation where you probably really need that luck sitting on your shoulder, but it's just not there anymore. I love it. It's fantastic. And now I am equally in love with transferable skill sets. In fact, I think that as as keepers and players are constructing and building their investigators, you should identify, the combat ones, fighting and firearms, I think are just a given. But beyond that, players and keepers should talk about their investigators that are being created, and based on the background and the direction that your character is going and where they've come from, you should identify, if it makes sense to you, but take advantage of this. Identify maybe 2 or 3 skill sets that make sense for your character to have them linked. A character who is going to be a doctor of medicine, I think it makes sense to have first aid and medicine.
Oh yeah,
be a transferable skill pair.
If your medicine hits 50, your first aid should just naturally go up by 10, guaranteed.
Boom.
And if you're so good at first aid that it's above 50, at this point, this isn't applying a Band-Aid or a splint. At this point, this is I'm resitting a compound fracture, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing serious first aid. I'm restarting your heart. Then yeah, giving a +10 to your medicine as a transferable thing. No, you're not going to be able to do open heart surgery with that, but you are a
Right.
lot more educated in the ways of medicine.
Yes, you're not doing heart surgery, you're not doing brain surgery, but you are helping birth a baby, right? You're doing an emergency, possibly an emergency C-section or possibly an emergency tracheotomy,
Yeah,
right?
you're doing minor surgeries at that point, so it should help your medicine.
Absolutely.
A couple more that would work is operating heavy machinery, which is I'm operating a forklift or something like that. I think this should also be related to your drive.
Yep.
Which of course, yes, if I'm doing a bulldozer, the controls are very different than a car, but a lot of the same principles and skills do come over. Such as the spatial awareness of if I want to make this turn and get between these two structures and fit between that, all of those little parts that make driving an automobile would still transfer over to operating heavy machinery. Like I said, it's not much, it's +10. And if your drive is above a
Yeah.
90, then but at this point you're up +20 on heavy machinery. Or if you're driving a bulldozer and you get a 90 skill, by God, you better be able to drive a car better, just as a result.
Exactly. I mean, both vehicles have clutches, they have accelerators, they've got steering wheels, they've got a brake. I mean, yes, you're driving that vehicle in addition to operating the hydraulics that go with it. But yeah, you're driving that. Another great pairing, and this is, I think what's interesting is this is where you can start having conversations with your keeper, because depending upon the character that you're building, certain pairings may make more sense than other pairings. So if your character is like a mechanic, a grease monkey, then maybe you could have a transferable skill set pair between electrical repair and mechanical repair. Right? You're still that guy who gets under the hood and solves the mechanical problem, whether that problem is electrical in nature or physically mechanical in nature. You're finding that solution and working it out. But mechanical repair in a lot of classic Call of Cthulhu scenarios has always also been linked with something like locksmith. So instead, if maybe your character isn't a grease monkey, maybe your character is a cat burglar, or a thief of some sort. Maybe you have a link, a transferable skill link between locksmith and mechanical repair.
No, and
right? I mean, just that kind of thing making sense.
that makes sense because there was, I think it was the Asylum was an adventure that I did recently, and possibly Shadow over Leningrad was another one I did recently, and I think it did that where it was like you can use your locksmith or your mechanical repair to open this up. It might have been like your mechanical repair at a minus, but clearly those two are linked. So I think the idea is if your mechanical repair has hit 50, you understand enough of how gears and all of those work that even if you are looking at a lock, and I think that starts off at a 1% too, right? Or is it a 5%?
It does. No, it's
okay.
1.
Then if your character's got a 50 in mechanical repair, I see no problem in saying, look, you got a locksmith of 11. Just because you understand so many of these principles, you're just making them smaller.
Mm-hmm.
That you should at least be able to look at it and scratch your chin and be like, I'm willing to give this a shot.
Yep. Even the skill electrical repair, it even talks about in the skill description, if you're, say, playing a modern version of Call of Cthulhu, one of the skills that's available in modern, but it's not actually listed in a classic 20s character sheet, is demolitions. A lot of demolitions have, electrical
Oh,
timers and detonators and things like that. So you could have a matched pair.
well, if you're
transferable
really good at electrical
pair between that.
you can figure out how to do the radio transmitters and all of that is required for demolitions. No, that makes once again, it's a plus 10. It's not huge, but I do like the idea of if you're so good in one, a little of that bleeds over.
Yep. There are so many pairings that could be made.
Yeah, another one is just like astronomy and navigate. Which I think those two work very, very, very well together. If you can navigate, a ship across the ocean, you probably have a 10 in astronomy, just naturally.
The bare minimum, right?
And if you've got at least a 10 in astronomy or a 50 in astronomy, you can probably look up at the stars and be all like, okay, I know this information about where I am. You're not the world's best navigator, but you are better than somebody off the street. And in some sense, Natural World also works with that, because Natural World, you do have a lot of how the moon is. It just a lot of things about the world around.
Moss on the north side of a tree.
And
that kind of thing.
That would help you navigate out as far as how the world works is how you navigate. So that's not 3 that on the surface they aren't related, but I think if your astronomy got to be 50, which by the way that starts at a 1 because it's a science.
Yes, that's right.
Give yourself a few more points and navigate a natural world, I think, is a small boon to that.
And that particular pairing that you're just talking about, where you're also pulling in natural world, that's really kind of focusing on the flora portion of natural world. You think about the fauna portion of natural world, you could pair natural world with biology. Understanding of not only human anatomy but also animal anatomy.
Oh yeah. Well, biology is another one I'd probably put with first aid and medicine.
Sure, yeah.
If we go back to at the Mountains of Madness, when he's dissecting the elder things that they've pulled out of the ice, and he's using his biology to do these dissections. It's like that's some of the same skills you use for medicine.
Absolutely.
So
yeah. And I'm sure the elder thing used the same skills back on Gedney when he was dissecting him.
Poor
Gedney. Pour one out for Gedney, if you will, please.
And another one, which the adventure we just played, which stinks I have to reference it because it was not a good adventure, was the Shadows over Leningrad. And that one, there was like some cave paintings at one point, and I was like, well, if your characters look at, they can use their archaeology or anthropology or history to figure out what these paintings are about, because those 3 skills, while yes, they are separate skills, do have a lot of overlap between them. And I think when you start having adventures that start saying you could use this or this, that definitely is a qualifier for it's a transferable skill. So anthropology,
absolutely,
archaeology, and history should have that. If you've got a 50 in archaeology, I think your anthropology should have 10 points, and your history should definitely have 10 points. And kind of the same all the way around. If you understand enough history, you probably understand some archaeology and anthropology as well.
Yep. Absolutely.
So,
and your character sheet has enough room on it next to all the skills. You could put just like little footnote numbers, right? You could put a pair of 1s next to, or, put little 1s next to these skills, and then, some 2s next to these skills. And you could, add some little footnotes on the edge of your character sheet, just as a clarifier, like, oh, this one, these are, transferable skill pairs, and just kind of remember that. Maybe put the page number, pages 78, 79 in the Keeper rulebook, so that, just as a friendly reminder that, oh, that's right, when I hit a certain threshold of 50% in either of these skills, the companion skill gets a 10% bump, as long as it doesn't, exceed the one that hit the 50 threshold. And same again when it hits to 90, the companion gets a bump, as long as it doesn't go over. It's once you actually, let it sink in, like I finally did today, it's just so beautiful. Well, it's such a great rule. I love it.
Which, once again, in that last game, God, now it's the third time I mentioned it. We had a part where some character picked up a spear that they got from a moon beast. And spear is its own skill. It's its own thing. It starts at like 15 or 20%. But the character, because we were playing Pulp Cthulhu, had like a 60 in Brawl Melee. So they picked up, was like, hey, make sure here's the base for spear. Give yourself a +10. Because you're so good at Brawl Melee that even though you've never picked up a spear before in your life, you're better than other people who have never picked up a spear in their life, because you're 10 points ahead. You understand this much about the art of fighting that it makes it better. So, no, I love the idea of multiple skills that can do that in different sort of trees. And it also, once again, kind of falls under that education thing I was talking about, where if you do have your character that does have an 80 education and they do have that science, actually, I'm a medical doctor, and medical doctors, they should get first aid and medicine. I think it should also work like, hey, you pump your first aid above 50, your medicine just got +10, as long as it doesn't get above that, or vice versa. And I think it's a good way. Basically, players can get kind of free skill points, which is how we usually treated it, where it's like, hey, make sure you put your handgun, if that's what you want to jack up, make sure you get above 50. Why? Because then you're going to give 10 to your shotgun.
Yep, there you go.
So yeah, I'd love to see more of those. That would be spectacular.
That's awesome. This was a really good, fun conversation. I liked kind of hypothesizing and talking about this. This is neat. These are things that we can, really don't have to wait for a hypothetical 8th edition. You can apply some of these to your table now.
Yeah. Well, I also like to imagine, you've got like, Paul Frick or Mike Mason listening in going like, no, you idiots, this is why we can't do that.
Contact me, Mike. Come onto the show and we can have that debate. I think it'll be great.
Yeah, little did we know there was
Paul,
a knife fight several years ago of why they can't do that. It's caused some sort of traumatic memory of an argument from years back. But
there you go. We'll call it those horrible, horrible memories for them. Good stuff. Awesome. Well, Seth, this show, it is not possible without the support of our patrons. And we want to thank some of our patrons. We've got some new ones. I want to thank Brett Bookout. Thank you for supporting the show. He's a brand new patron, and welcome to the family.
Welcome, Brett. Now, we also had a few, though, that they're... I guess they're not new to the family, but they've gotten a little bit deeper in the family. We actually had several patrons who upgraded. So I would like to give a huge thank you, because I'm pretty sure John chose me to do this one when he was new. But Farty McButterpants has increased his patronage. So thank you, Farty McButterpants.
Yes, thank you, Mr. McButterpants.
No. You call him by his first name. He's close enough for the family now, sorry.
Farty. Thank you, Farty. And also, Chris, and I'm going to butcher this, but Chris IU has also upgraded and is now more invested in supporting the show. So thank you, Chris.
Thank you. And finally, Matthew Rep has also decided to delve deeper into the modern Mythos world of patronage. Thank you, Matthew.
And I believe they probably all did this because they want to have the ability, the option of being selected to play the code with you. Now, by the time this episode airs, we have already played the code. I have already run Seth through it, and future Seth had a fantastic time.
I'll believe it when I see it, sir. Well, whatever the reason, thank you very much, guys.
Yes, it's going to be awesome. Thank you, guys. If you are interested in being a patron, please come join us. You can go to patreon.com/modern_mythos and join the family.
Another way you can join, just kind of chat with us, sometimes give us some show ideas or tell us when we were wrong. We have a Discord server, which we can join, chat, throw out ideas, ask us any questions, or, just kind of spitball some stuff. That's where we got some of the ideas for the adventure that we need to get back to writing after you beat me in our Deathlock competition. So just join our Discord server. We've got an invitation link down in the show notes.
Absolutely. And this show is also available on YouTube. Thank you, Seth, for making that happen.
Very slowly.
So you can
very
slowly, but that's totally fine. Totally fine. The show's already available, through our regular feed, but you can check out our YouTube channel, and we love talking to the listeners through YouTube as well.
I just recently did the episode where we talked about horror inspirations, and you and I were rapid firing through so many books, and I was trying to find book covers for all those, like The Color Out of Time and The Fisherman and all those ones that we talked about. So that took me forever because, man, we went through a lot of titles.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. If you had contacted me, I would have scanned my book covers for you.
Oh, man, I got Google right here. Actually, the problem is it's such an old book. There were so many covers. And the problem is the best one is either too small to use, because if I was to use it on the video, it would just be so horribly fuzzy.
Yeah, grainy.
Yeah. Or it's like a photograph of the most gorgeous cover on earth that was then used to stop a runaway motorcycle or something. So you're like, is there a picture of what this looked like when it wasn't scuffed to hell? Is there like a pristine picture? Never is. So that was one of those books where I was like, oh, there's a great cover. It's only 30 pixels high. What, is there a bigger one? And you find it. It's like, well, yeah, except then we took a grinder to it. So.
See, that's where me scanning my books would have been coming in handy for you.
I enjoy the hunt. You can also find us on Facebook, the Modern Mythos Facebook page. Once again, got a link down in the show notes.
And we do provide the RSS link in our show notes so that I have actually heard some people will take the RSS link and they'll paste it in iTunes. And so it'll get automatically updated through iTunes if you use the RSS link. So that's a way to get us. I am still trying to work on trying to get us actually on Apple Podcasts. So that's... Yeah, well,
I know. This is also the episode where I just bust your chops. We have a Redbubble store where you can pick up Modern Mythos shirts and stickers. I actually currently have my Modern Mythos sticker on my ridiculously huge case for my recording equipment. On some hypothetical day, I have to take it on tour. So
there you go.
But, I was never in a band. When I was younger, all my friends were in punk bands, and they always had their instrument cases that were slathered in stickers. So I'm like, well, I'm going to finally get a case for my boom arms and all that stuff. It's like, I'm going to slather it in stickers because high school me would think that's awesome. So I wanted to put that sticker as a place of honor on it.
The great thing is that even modern you thinks it's awesome, as well as high school you. So
he does.
There's that. And if you go to Drive-Thru RPG, we do have the Artifacts book that we put together for our, as a thank you to our patrons last year. So it's filled with really cool Call of Cthulhu artifacts that you can use in your game, and they are all named after our patrons. So it was a lot of fun to put that together. There was hours and hours of creative activity going on into putting that together, and it's filled from stem to stern with John Sumrow art. It's got an amazing cover of moi, and it's filled with pictures of the artifacts as well. So John did an amazing job for us, and so I encourage everyone to go and check out that artifacts book. It's called Mythos Artifacts.
That one,
you can find it on the Miskatonic repository on Drive-Thru-RPG. There'll be a link to it in our show notes.
That one was a lot of fun to do because we would come up with those over the course of weeks. So occasionally, John and I would go in this share document we have. It would just be some weird note. Like, I want a magic 8-ball that's not an 8-ball. That was it for a couple of weeks till we're like, okay, let's figure out how this works. So it was a lot of just like kind of getting to watch that creative process. We got to see how each other did it. And it is completely equal and completely different forms of chaos. So that was fun.
Absolutely. Yep. That was a lot of fun. We need to do something again like that. Well, we cannot do this show alone. In addition to our patrons, we have our amazing editors, Max Mohafa, Edwin Nagy. Thank you guys for your hard work and keen skills in making us sound awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And also, we want to thank, and we mentioned before, John Sumrow for our badass logo and cover of the Mythos Artifacts book. He is a very talented artist, so please follow him on Facebook, check out his official website, and please consider joining his Patreon account. Once again, links below in the show notes.
And finally, we want to thank the Darkest of the Hillside Thickets for generously allowing us to use their song, Gluttony, as our intro and outro music. If you're a fan of Lovecraft's writing and the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game, then you really need to check out the Darkest of the Hillside Thickets. Check out their Bandcamp site and their official band site. We'll have links to both of those in the show notes.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.